Let's be honest, did we expect anything when we saw this trailer? I mean, that looks like the most 8th grade Photoshop job I've ever seen. So The Conjuring Last Rites involves Ed and Lorraine Ward in their final mission, or so you would be led to believe, in the Conjuring universe that was once created by James Wan. I'm pretty vocal that I think the Conjuring movies clearly peaked after the first and second movie, and at this point the franchise is on life support. This movie promised the epic conclusion to the Ed and Lorraine saga. We're going to get the final case that ended them all. So you would think, because what you actually end up getting is a pretty watered down family drama with sprinkles of what made The Conjuring unique. Now, starting off with what I actually enjoyed about this film, I think the family drama element of the movie is actually probably the strongest element. The problem being, I don't think the majority of people go to Conjuring movies for that. I think they go there for the scares, the setup, the jump scares, just the universe and the set pieces they've gone on to create. That's what people go there for. We want more of the same. This franchise decides to lean heavily into family drama involving the birth of a child, involving Ed and Lorraine's children growing up, marriage complications, all of the stuff that as I'm explaining it probably sounds like, why the hell is that in this movie? Yeah, that is the focal point of this movie, which I will say is actually probably the strongest part of the movie. So again, double-edged sword, because as I'm talking about it, I'm sure it sounds like this is a movie that could have went completely off the rails. I think it's pretty effective for the most part of what it's trying to achieve. The problem being, I don't think it's what the majority of fans want. So this is a classic case of, do I think it's like the worst thing ever? Not really, but is it what I signed up for? Definitely not. Very similar to how I felt about 28 years later. Just at this point in the franchise, especially when it comes to a conclusion movie, to go this route, very, very risky. So know that going into it, there are elements of this movie that are very similar to the original ones that a lot of people fell in love with, but this movie is very different tonally in the pacing, and just the way it feels to watch this movie feels pretty disconnected from the Conjuring universe as a whole. Other thing I enjoyed about this film, much like all of these movies, I enjoy Ed and Lorraine Warren. I just think their acting is great. I think their chemistry is great. The characters are unique. Again, obviously a little bit zazzed up from what the actual stories of these are if you read up to them. The stories aren't very interesting. I also find it just out of the blue very wild that Matt Rife bought all of these people's inventory. I have to say that too. But getting back on track, I think that they are great together. It's going to be a little bit somber seeing them go off into the sunset, although if this movie does well enough, you know, for a blank check, I'm sure they'll come back for one more movie. But I always enjoy watching these two work together. Patrick Stewart and Vera Farmiga are just great actor and actresses, so pairing them up in a horror franchise, kind of oddly unique nowadays to get that type of star power in the lead roles that draw you to the box office. Horror's become synonymous with, you know, unknown actors and actresses and just low budget. And then lastly, I will say there are a couple of moments in this movie I think they kind of effectively set up scares. Again, the Conjuring universe kind of went on to get a reputation doing this. That's what made this franchise really stem from the ground up from James Wan. He really knew how to capture scares. And this movie has a couple of set pieces that are pretty effective, you know, the way they use the lighting. Although I will say this movie is entirely too dark. It almost feels like they didn't know how to showcase some things, so they overly darken the movie to hide the way they were trying to shoot things. But fans of this franchise will find a couple of moments I think were pretty effective that kind of get some people to jump. I didn't jump or find it super effective, but I always say I'm kind of a hard audience. But I can also tell that there are moments that, especially if you're a weaker viewer and you found the Insidious movies scary and you find the Conjuring movies to be terrifying, you'll have a couple moments in this you might jump out of your seat. So take that with a grain of salt. I also kind of enjoyed the boyfriend angle of this movie when you're getting to know the guy who's trying to marry the Warren's daughter. I really liked his commitment. He could have came off like a complete cartoon because in the end, he is a throwaway character. He's not one of the central characters. His aspirations of wanting to get to marry their daughter and just throwing himself into the world of terror that this family goes through, and the fact that she could potentially have gotten the gift that her mother got, all of these things could have been just unwatchably bad, but I thought they were handled pretty decent. But what bothered me about this film, and it goes right back to some of the positives, this movie is more of a family drama than like a Conjuring movie, and that's just not what I sign up for when I go to these movies. I go to these as reliable jump scares, get some lighting tricks, and just some setups that we've become known through the James Wan movies that I think are just infinitely more effective than that third movie was. Apparently, this is by the director of The Nun 2 and The Curse of La Llorona, and everybody shits on that movie. They hate The Curse of La Llorona. I thought it was okay. Incredibly stupid movie, don't get me wrong, but it was not near one of the worst, like, PG-13 gateway horror films I've ever seen. Never seen The Nun 2, never seen The Nun. Those movies have absolutely no appeal to me, so I don't know his previous work, but it is strange to me that in the conclusion of this franchise, we're going with this guy, not James Wan. This feels like a missed layup to me that we didn't bring back James Wan in the very conclusion of this franchise and wrap this up nicely with all of the suspense and terror that originally made this famous. We just go with this other guy, which is always disappointing because I think what people remember is how they leave off. And I think the first two movies of this franchise are so good and they're so iconic, so much better than all of the other properties in the Conjuring universe. To leave on this note feels a little bit bittersweet because I wouldn't say this is a terrible film, but I'd say it's like right in the middle. It's the first and second movies are by far the best Conjuring movies. This one maybe slots in third ahead of the third movie. I didn't like that movie particularly well, but they're kind of on the same level, this one and that one. So again, know what you're getting going into it. Also need to mention this movie is over 2 hours long. That is like a buzz term at this point. If the movie is over 2 hours long, you have to warrant the fact that I'm giving you 2 hours of my time. It feels like movie times have gotten bloated over the past couple of years. Another concrete example right here. This movie, if you shave off 20, 30 minutes of the movie, 90 minutes, 100 minutes, absolutely chef's kiss, beautiful. Why we needed to be here for 2 hours and 10 minutes, I do not understand. It wasn't that compelling. Kind of reminds me of that scene from This Is the End where Jonah Hill's character's like, am I really compelled? Am I really?
The power of Christ compels you.
Guess what? It's not that compelling.
And lastly, by far the biggest negative this movie has, and what will rub everybody the wrong way. Once again, I'm not really sure what we expected if you watched the first teaser or trailer. I avoid the trailers, but this one even made its way to me. It was so bad. Is this movie is so terribly CGI'd, like the demons and the entities and the things that should generate scares in this movie generate laughs, and that's never a good thing. Again, you might find some effectiveness in this if you are kind of weaker on the horror fan side, but the issue is, when you have a movie like this, these movies were always loosely inspired by a true story. The Ed and Lorraine Warren story of what these true cases were. We have documentations and photos. And that's kind of what wins you over because there's like a pseudo-realism to these movies that makes you feel like they could possibly happen. At this point in the franchise, not only are we completely out of gas and we have no new tricks in the bag, it is so far removed from reality. There is no chance on earth that these stories could have actually happened. The things that are being depicted, the entities, the way they look. We are in straight up Cartoonville, Courage of the Cowardly Dog. There is nothing realistic about these stories whatsoever. Again, that might not bother some people, but to me, the grounding force of this franchise was always that it was based in realism. This doesn't feel anything realistic. This feels faker than Resident Evil. So again, I don't know. Overall, guys, I don't think The Conjuring Last Rites is like the worst movie of the year or anything. I think it is kind of boring at points, being over 2 hours, and it's not really the movie I signed up for. But that being said, I think the movie we do get is overall effective at certain points when it comes to getting emotional and the conclusion of the Warren family and the family drama. Just again, not what I signed up for. That being said, if I had to watch a Conjuring movie, I'm easily watching the first or second movie. I'm probably never watching this movie again. Probably safe to wait for streaming. If you guys do get around to seeing The Conjuring Last Rites, comment down below. Let me know. Do you think that number 1 and 2 are just easily the best movies in this franchise? Or better yet, are you kind of just over these movie universes like the Conjuring universe where we're going to get 30 movies stemming from one? Can we just leave it as is, or do you guys want the big universe? Comment, like, subscribe down below, join the channel. I will see you in the next review. Peace.